I am live. I've already read this morning, but I thought, oops, that was my cat coming out of the window. Almost jumped on me there. I am reading out of Winged Pharaoh. It's a far memory book by Joan Grant. That's her. 1937 it was published. It was her first far memory book. And it plays in ancient Egypt, before the flood and before Babylon. So it's a long time ago. She is Sikita. She's going to co-rule with her brother Nea. She's been through her ordeals. She's managed them all. And we are now, after she has been crowned, so to speak, she's now Pharaoh with her brother Nea. And we are in chapter 2 here of the 5th part of this book, entitled Daily Life. When rulership was new to me, the ceremony of my days seemed like the games that Nea and I used to play when we were children. When wine jars had become the 42 assessors, when a reed cut from the river bank was the flail of Pharaoh, and the trees bowing in the wind were his people in homage. I still woke soon after dawn and recorded on my tablet any memory of what I had done away from earth that would aid me in what I must do throughout the day. Adjoining my apartments I had a little sanctuary, copied from the room in which I used to sleep in a temple. In it there was no furniture, and the white walls were undecorated except by the flowers in a niche under the high window. Here, upon waking and before I slept, I prayed to the gods that I might be worthy of my heritage, and that to all my people I might give wisdom, justice, and compassion. Then I would swim with Nea in the private pool of the garden of herbs of Sa'atet, upon which our rooms opened. After we had swum together, I lay on a high, narrow couch, while Paki rubbed my body with scented oils until my muscles were smooth under her fingers. Then she would sponge me with cool lotion from a silver bowl, and while I rested with all my muscle relaxed, my hands and feet were tended, the nails painted vermilion, or if it was a day of festival, covered with gold leaf. In the temple I had but a single comb and a little copper mirror, in which my reflection was blurred as I saw it in a wind-rippled pool. Now my ivory combs were carved with my seal as the winged Pharaoh, the hawk of the trained will upon the triumphal boat, above the wings of a winged one. Then below this my Horus name, Sat, written as a snake next to the key of life and flanked by 2 rods of power wielded upon earth and away from earth. This seal was carved on my ointment jars, which were also a gift from my mother upon my marriage day, and I had jars of salves and unguents, and alabaster flasks of scented oils, silver hand mirrors with handles of carved ivory, and some pallets for grinding the malachite, with which I shaded my eyelids. I had little sticks of hard black grease, sharpened like the reeds of a drawing scribe, with which I lengthened my eyes like the statue of goddess, and I shaped my brows with pluckers of silver, so that they sloped upwards like the wings of a flying bird. Paki would comb my hair, which was cut to shoulder length, and polish it with fine linen cloth until it was as smooth as the shining coat of a black stallion. Sometimes I wore the Sphinx headdress of linen or a wig of yellow woolen plaits, gold-tipped, but usually I bound my hair with a wreath of flowers or netted it in narrow turquoise beads. For ceremonies I wore the gold fillet of the royal cobra, or the white crown, which, though it was made of layers of starched linen was heavy upon my head. If the day was hot, Leah and I took our first meal in the pavilion of plants, or if it was cool, in one of our private rooms. We drank milk from alabaster cups and ate fruit from dishes inlaid with lapislazuli, ripe dates and figs, melons and apricots and grapes. And we rinsed our hands in a bowl of scented water and dried them on napkins embroidered with gazelles or scarlet fish, or patterned with vine leaves. Every second day, Nea or I gave audience, until an hour before high noon, or if he was away from the royal city, I gave audience 4 days in every 7. The one who was not in audience sat in council in the room of seals with viziers and overseers and all others who came for the decree of Pharaoh. Messengers would come to us from distant cities, bringing news about the harvest, about the welfare of the people and of their care, all that affects the people of Calm, be it a roadway or a system of water channels, the building of a new temple or the dwelling where the old pass their days in gentle quietude, the planting of the highways with trees so that the traveller may walk in the shade, or the planting of gardens that are shared amongst the people. All these things receive the seal of Pharaoh, for the people of Calm are to Pharaoh as his palace. Their joy is his contentment, and their sorrows are the tears of his heart. To all matters that had to do with temples, I set my seals with my priest name, Mary Nayet, the beloved of Neserah, the name which he had given to me, his pupil, after my initiation. The name Neserah means born a priest of the light, for at his birth it was known that before returning to earth he was already a fully initiated priest. He wrote his name with a symbol of the goddess Nayet, the goddess of those who are born ancient of days. This is a sheaf of my corn, bound with a thong, to show that the wisdom which it symbolizes has been garnered, and across the sheaf are the 2 arrows of the trained will, one pointing to earth and one away from earth, showing that in both places can this will be directed. At the festival of Nate, her symbol is carried on a standard, and in the writing sign of her name, the pole of the standard is shown supporting the sheaf. So upon my seal there was a plough, Mary, meaning beloved. For as the plough furrows a field before the harvest, so does love make the heart fruitful. And this was followed by Neserah's seal. One of the names of the great menace was Sa'ab, the wise of heart, and the seal for his name was a bundle of reeds and papyrus tied with a scarlet thong, for he had united the north, the land of the papyrus, with the south, the land of the reed, by the wisdom of his heart and the scarlet of a warrior. This seal was also used by my father, but Nea and I used it in 2 forms, either the field of papyrus or the field of reeds, and this was often followed by a young bird, meaning earth child, and Za in the form of a sieve. Pharaoh, son of Horus, Za, son of Za. My father had also written his name by the snake and the arm, which are the sound signal for Za. Nea and I used the snake alone. These seals could be enclosed in a pillared square to show that we had gained entry into the house of the gods. The great building splendid with pillars, Above the square was the hawk, the symbol of trained will, showing that this was the Horus name of Pharaoh. Sometimes, in addition to the Horus name, we would write Atet, the father A, that same feather which is wisdom, and the half circle, the sign for T. If I wished to show that it was I who had set the seal, I would use my own form of it, in which there was the priest symbol of a drop of water, which showed that just as rain falls from the heavens, so had I brought the water of my Ma'at down to earth. This sign, which means remembered wisdom, is also the sound sign for Tet. Ray-Hetep was the vizier of the royal household. His scribes kept the records of all tribute, and under his counsel it was allotted for the welfare of Kham. The overseer of the royal household had held his office since the time of my father. He was an authority over all the palace servants, over the 20 cooks and all the kitchen boys, the 100 serving women, the linen weavers, the washers of clothes and the water carriers. Harka was still overseer of the chariots, and in his care were all the royal animals, the horses and lions, the hunting dogs and cattle, the asses and geese and ducks and milk goats. Pharaoh's cupbearer was also the master of the vineyard. At his decree the vines were planted, the grapes harvested and pressed in the vats, and the wine jars stored in the cellars. The overseer of the gardeners was the brother of Ma'ata. Under his direction were the 300 men and women who worked in the gardens and orchards of the palace and on the grain lands of Pharaoh. Yet all these sometimes came to Pharaoh for counsel, to tell him that a new plant had flowered for the first time, or that the foreign grapes prospered, that a mare was in foal, or that a blight had fallen upon a cornfield. And to all these things did Pharaoh give his ear and his heart. In the hot weather, all in the palace slept for 2 hours at noonday, and as Ra grew gentle upon his journey, sometimes Nea and I would sail together on the lake, or go upon the hunt with our nobles, sparing crocodiles or flying our throwing sticks at a wild fowl in the marshes. And we would race our chariots against the captain, but none were so skilled in this as Nea, for when the reins were between his fingers, a horse would turn like a flying swallow, and at his voice would outstrip the wind. Often there were banquets in the great hall of the palace, but the evenings that I loved were those when Nea and I were alone together. We would tell each other all that we had done throughout the day, and when I had sat in judgment, I would tell him of what had been brought before me, and ask what judgments he would have given. And it was as if the long years I had been away from him had passed as quickly as a shadow moves a cupid over the ground. Our hearts were near to each other, and our thoughts were matched like twin-paced horses in a chariot. Now that I was Pharaoh, my mother no longer lived in the palace. Though she had been weary of rulership, she shared the guardianship of Kham with Nea until I took up the flail. Then she was free to leave the life of ceremony and to live in the house that was the most beloved to her of any dwelling place upon the earth. For here it was that she had lived with my father in the days of their youth. This little palace, which had been built by Menes, was circled by sycamore trees, and its lawns opened on to the lake. Nea and I often went to see her there, and though our day might have been long and we weary with responsibility, we were as children that are happy while we walked in her tranquility. It's getting a little bit dark. This is that was chapter 2 of the 5th part, and chapter 3 is to follow. I'm wishing all a good night.